Welcome back, everyone. So, in this second part of this kind of peek inside series into this repertoire, I will show you the Queen's Gambit lines. So we recommend the move e6, and of course here the two main options for white are to play knight c3 or knight f3. There are other moves as well. So e3 is covered in the course as a rare option. a3, even such moves are covered, or bishop f4. So mainly the thing is not like to remember these lines exactly, but I believe if you scroll through these a few times, then you will have a good understanding why these are not so good and why these are not the main lines. So it's kind of useful, but again, this is also part of the number of trainables, which are like, you can quite easily reduce that number if you are not studying such moves like bishop f4 a lot, for example. Also, after knight f3 and knight f6, there are lots of different moves from white covered, to make sure that you are not getting move ordered or any tricky lines. So white can try different things like queen c2, for example, and it looks like a normal move, but I believe black already has a quite easy solution here to solve the main issue of the queen's gambit, this bishop on c8. So, for example, taking and playing a6 is one of the plans which is often there in these lines, and yeah, this is one of those cases. Obviously, white can take on d5 anytime, and yeah, here the main emphasis normally is to develop this bishop and to f5. So all the analysis is around this, whether white can prevent it or not. Normally not, fortunately. So yeah, these moves are covered, and I would say the first like serious line, which is played quite often, is the one with e3. So if you watch the previous video, then you can already have a feeling that okay, this can get into into this jungle of different move orders where like it's very tough to remember like in which position what we want to do. So I showed you in the previous video. I will just it quickly. Like if the game starts like a cola, then I really don't like e6 because, for example, c4 is there, b3 is there, bishop d3 move order. So yeah, it's not in our hands what's gonna happen. So the same can be said in a lot of cases about e3. So there are like at the very least 6 good moves in this position for black. But then white has at least like 3-4 moves. Like they can play b3, bishop b2, or play knight d2, or play bishop d3. And if these things multiply, it can lead to a lot of different type of positions, and it's probably not the best use of time to study a lot of things against e3, which is not the main line. It can happen a lot, but it's definitely not the most critical line. So the goal in the course in such cases, again, try to reduce white's good options. So therefore comes this move of a6 again. And it very seriously limits white's good options. So why is that? Because if they develop the bishop now, that's a well-known inaccuracy at the very least, because they simply lose a tempo. After dc, Again, black can get this tempo and then develop the bishop to b7, probably play c5, knight d7, and so on. So have an excellent queen's gambit with an extra tempo, because the bishop is not taking from f1 but from d3. So that's already one of the major points of a6. If white tries to be a little bit smarter and play knight d2, so maybe take back with the knight on c4, then of course we are not taking on c4 at all, but we are going to play c5 now. Okay, you can say, but in a very similar position we did not play c5 in the previous video, or like we are afraid of the Tarrasch. Okay, we are not afraid, but we don't want to transpose into some different opening. But here the point is that we wait for the knight to come to d2, and it will be not on c3, which is its ideal square, so there is zero pressure on our center, and we can play like knight c6, probably take on d4, and then bishop d6 or bishop d6 immediately, and the knight is really unfortunate on d2 in these lines. So of course white still has some options here, but we greatly figured out that what is likely to happen, and the knight on d2 is passive, so it's already a success. And the main move is b3. So by seeing the bishop d3 line, you can guess why. So they want to take back with the c pawn, with the b pawn on c4. And now we play c5. Again, what is the key thing here is that even though now the knight can go to c3, but this pawn was moved to b3, so this diagonal will be weaker. So it once again, the game is not just like, okay, white can do this, white can do that, but the moves are limited for white. So yeah, we are playing in this fashion here, and for example, if they play bishop b2, I mean, okay, that's the most expected move. Then again, we could play knight c6, bishop e7, bishop d6, d takes c4. So many different ways of getting some normal position, but the easiest is when the opponent doesn't have too many moves. So the recommendation is c takes on d4. Okay, they can of course take back with the knight, but that poses zero challenge. Also analyzed in the course. So ed. And okay, one more thing here is that with these 4 pawns, like the options are like, okay, not limitless, but we can only take in one. We can only take one pawn. Okay, if we develop, then white can take here, take there, or just take in one of those two. So these kind of permutations are like really crazy in this type of positions, and I believe very hard to learn. So if there is a good way to take, then develop with the tempo, and then we managed till move 8 or 9, we managed to get rid of all of this central tension, which is very good for memorizing things, I would say, and also have a clear plan. So for example, we castle, they play bishop d3, and the clear plan is that since white has hanging pawn structure, very typical positional ideas is to either play for e5 to make these pawns less flexible, or to play for the move b5. So it really looks like that e5 is not a possibility at this moment, and it is indeed the case, but there is b5. So everything goes like quite nicely. Only white cannot even play c5, which would be anyway very nice for black, because you can see these squares are now like accessible for our pieces, so it would be already very good, but probably this move is even better. I'm not sure though, because I just realized that I missed bishop takes h7, but okay, I'm not sure what what we say in the course about this, but yeah, maybe just knight e6 is then better. In any case, c takes b5 is the question, and after a takes b, bishop b5, there is knight e4, and white is under some early pressure here. There is pressure on d2. This bishop can be loose, and for example, if they castle, then the game can be decided very quickly by a double attack on d2 and b5. Okay, this was just an example line in this e3 system, but I believe you can get some picture that what we want here. So we don't want to get lost in different move orders, but we want to know what we will have, and it's much better than to be terrified that okay, which line how we are going to confuse. So that's about e3 here. Obviously, one of the main moves is knight to c3, and yeah, this is one of the major points of the repertoire, or one of the new lines. I believe it was not really covered, at least I don't know about it before. So it's the move h6. So what's the point here? That there are again a lot of moves for black, like c6, knight d7, a6, bishop e7, bishop b4, c5. So I believe it is already at least 6 moves which I just showed to you. All good systems. Like maybe you already play one of these things. I would say in that case that then this course can be even a very nice addition to you, because against all of these moves, the lines with bishop to g5 are possible. Okay, that's maybe an understatement. Probably lines with bishop g5 are the main lines in most cases. But if you play h6, you kind of keep the same structure, but you completely eliminate lines with bishop to g5. And it really narrows white's options a lot. So that's the main point of this h6. So if you played Queen's Gambit declined earlier, then it shouldn't be a very difficult to add this move. And if you did not, then you still can learn from the repertoire, obviously. Okay, this h6 was covered before, so like Carlsen played like this, and okay, many strong players. But what is really new is to meet bishop f4. Normally everyone plays bishop d6, which is a very solid variation. But here the course recommends bishop to b4. So basically this is one of the sharper openings for black, the Ragozin in this position. And okay, lines go like cd, ed, bishop g5 right away. It's pretty much in all the main lines the bishop goes to g5. So now what happens that we play h6. We can argue it's not so useful. It is certainly true, but the bishop is not putting any pressure on our position. So therefore, even this knight is free to move, like to e4 sometimes, or knight takes d5 is possible. So yeah, it's basically a Ragozin where we gave up a tempo, but we forced the white's bishop to a Wurst square. So it's quite interesting, and I haven't found anything, for example, from the white side on Chessable for this position after 5 moves, and there are like hundreds of opening courses on Chessable or any other site. So yeah, it's basically the game starts from here. We want to go like c5, queen a5. If white takes our pawn, normally we want to get it back from with the knight. We want to go like castle. So our moves are, I would say, very similar in many of these variations. Okay, there are some exceptions. For example, white can immediately take on d5. Now we can take back with the e pawn. That's interesting, but there is even like this option of knight takes d5, which is obviously never there in the Ragozin because the bishop is spinning, or the bishop is even from c1 can go to d2. And now the point is that it's a double attack. Bishop goes back, we play castle, e4, take, and bishop a5. So this is kind of an interesting version of the semi-Tarrasch opening, where our bishop is more active on this diagonal, pressuring c3, and then we can continue with c5 and knight to c6. And again, there are no games here, while if I go to the... So this is the regular semi-Tarrasch. Okay, normally black takes here and plays bishop b4, but yeah, via some move order it's also possible to get into such position where you can see that the bishop will be on a different square, or rather, sorry, the knight is not really going to c6 in this case. So like bishop e7, rook b1, something like this. So you can say that the bishop is probably better for defense here, but on a5 it's better for pressuring that pawn and attacking d4. In any case, this is just one possibility. There are many other. So yeah, I believe it's a nice addition to any Queen's Gambit declined repertoire, or just as the repertoire itself, it's also completely fine in my opinion. Like with our analysis with Angelica, we haven't found a line which would refute this thing or like comes even close to it. So it's an excellent surprise weapon. So that's about bishop to f4, and obviously there is the move g3, which was recommended in quite a few Chessable courses. Makes sense trying to transpose into the Catalan, but then our recommendation is just go with knight to c6 and make this move h6 useful. So it is absolutely not a waste of time. It is actually a very good move. This system is, it's quite popular. Bluebaum plays it a lot, I believe, and with good results. So the h6 move now does a very good and important purpose of stopping bishop g5 with huge pressure on d5. And yeah, so this is just a really good and already like established a good line for black, but still rare. So that's a good part about it as well. Okay, so I believe that's about if white starts with knight f3. The other move obviously is knight to c3. Now the move is not knight f6, because then they could take, or they could play bishop g5 right away. So to keep things logical and coherent within the repertoire, the recommendation is h6 in this position as well. So if white were to go knight f3, it is just an immediate transposition. And what other moves they have? Obviously, there are two logical moves. What I can see is that bishop f4 or take on d5. So take on d5 and playing the so-called Carlsbad structure is obviously, one of the, this h6 were not played that many times, so I cannot say that it's already established main line, but it's like very common compared to the relative low number of games. White plays bishop f4, and here we recommend c6. So there are moves like knight f6 here, for example, but c6 is okay. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it was also the choice of Nakamura in in the recent candidates tournament. So the point is that we really want to solve the problem of this bishop on c8. And once we do that, if you are a Queen's Gambit declined player, then you know that one of our major problems is solved. And if you are not, then you will learn that this is one of the major problems. So at this point, I can also say that there is we did also a white repertoire with Angelica, where there are like 100 lines in the Queen's Gambit from the white side, and one of the main themes is just to stop this bishop from c8 to develop to f5 or g4. And here it's pretty much impossible for white to stop. So that's already a small success for black, because if they play queen c2, which would be a very standard move in a normal Carlsbad to stop this move, then actually we can take advantage of quote unquote losing time with h6, because there is this strange looking move of knight e7, which is actually very strong. So the idea is to play bishop f5, and there is no way white can prevent it. So most likely they play something like e3, then we play bishop f5, after bishop d3 we trade, and it becomes clear at this point that the knight is actually not misplaced on e7 at all. It can go to g6 even with the tempo, then we can develop, and the knight may become even useful for some play on the king side, and it's not in front of the f-pawn, so f5 will be also much easier to push for black. So this position looks already completely fine. So they cannot stop with queen c2, so in our analysis the main line is one of the main lines is e3, bishop f5, but again we start from some sort of superiority. I believe, like at least theoretically speaking, that we managed to develop our problematic piece, and the rest of the pieces are much easier to develop. Of course, there are critical tries like g4, like knight g2, maybe with knight g3. So white can try different things to try to exploit some advantage in the development, but according to our analysis, black is doing fine in this line. So this is completely playable, and I mean it already, like if Nakamura plays like this in the candidates, it kind of shows that, like this line, then it kind of shows that it cannot be like bad or something. So yeah, the Carlsbad is definitely there, but still it feels like a success, right? So we play h6, and if white has nothing better than to open up our bishop, then it's already something. So I believe one of the critical lines in the course is bishop f4. Then we go knight f6. So obviously, if if they take, then we can even take back with the knight. That's quite actually good. And if they play like e3 or bishop or knight to f3, like these are the two most common and most expected moves, then in both cases we can reply with bishop b4. So here it's a direct transposition to immediate knight f3 on the third move, and if they play e3 bishop b4, so in the course we cover different tries here from white, like moves like rook c1, queen c2, queen b3, moves that were never even played before are covered, but practice shows that most likely white either in this move or the next one is playing knight f3, which is once again will be just a transposition to that, to this Ragozin with bishop f4 and bishop b4, which is mean, it's not an invention, but it's kind of, you know, one of the new lines in the course. So what white can also try is to make the move c5, which is also mentioned in the Chessable course, and then there is b6, b4, a5, trying to undermine the queen side, and then bishop e7. And yeah, so for example, e3, castle, knight f3, knight e4. So this is just one example in this line. So white is gaining a lot of space, but black's development is better, and we can either try to open up the queen side and create some targets there, or to play something like f5, g5, and try to do something with this f4 bishop. The lines are very interesting. This is probably the sharpest line in the whole course, and this was recommended for white from Grandmaster Aram Hakobian in his course, and yeah, so it's covered in really big detail. The lines are really interesting for both colors, but again, according to our analysis, black is doing well here. So yeah, this is the second part of the course. So it's the Queen's Gambit declined, but with the twist of not allowing black to play regular setups with bishop to g5. And okay, actually I should just mention one more thing, that after knight f3, knight f6, white can obviously play the Catalan as well with g3. And yeah, we could recommend again this system with h6, which Nakamura played in the candidates, but here there is a small difference, that the knight is not yet on c3. I mean, it's not a decisive difference, I would say, but the lines are still a little bit different. So as you will see from the next video, the decision was not to connect these lines to a full h6 line against the Catalan, but basically you are covered here. You don't have to do a lot of work, I would say, to make this line to work when the knight is not on c3, but in order to not to get move ordered at all, the recommendation is to play knight d7, because this position would come anyway from the rete opening, as you will understand from the next video. So here our recommendation is the closed Catalan, at least it seems like that. But I believe it should be called closed Catalan only if the pawn is already on c6. Our setup is a little bit more tricky, because we did not promise our opponent that we are gonna put this pawn on c6, and actually we are not gonna do that at all. And that's how we want to solve the problem of the c8 bishop. Either it should go to b7 or to a6. So what I am talking about is, for example, if they play a move like knight d2, then we use that the pawn is not yet on c6 and we play b6. So the goal is to play bishop to b7. And normally to b6, the correct reaction from white is not to wait for the bishop for the good diagonal, but to close it. However, here in this position, the knight is really misplaced on d2. So you can see it blocks the bishop, and it would be much better on c3, connected with knight e5, putting pressure on d5. And therefore it is committed to a much worse square. We can afford the structure, and we can make moves like c5, a5, bishop a6. So in such fashion, we are gonna solve the problem of the bishop quite easily. So normally white plays something like b3, but here black completely solves the problem of the bishop and like all the pieces. And I just highlighted here one typical idea to bring the rook to c7, then bring the queen to a8, and then probably the other rook to c8. And black has nothing to complain about here. Another interesting idea is that if they go b3, also like typical move, they just want to play like bishop b2 and so on, just develop normally. Here we do not play b6 because it would allow like cd, ed, and this is now not that much of a fun because now the knight is coming to c3, pressuring our position. So therefore we have another very interesting solution here, take on c4, b takes, and c5. So we gave up the center, opened up the bishop, but in return we get a very nice target on c4 because this pawn will become isolated. I mean, it's already like isolated because it cannot be protected by another pawn, and it will be probably a target on the c file or to some knight b6. So this is already practically quite a tricky position for white, I would say. And the main line is queen to c2, where again we could transpose to close the Catalan with c6. But we are not doing that at all, as I said, but there is this move of a5, which is quite interesting, in my opinion. So the point is that if white continues normal development with rook d1, the idea is to play d takes on c4, queen takes on c4, and b5. So it's a very unique way of solving the problem of this bishop. So if white is not taking this pawn, but let's say retreats to c2, which actually what people normally do, who has never seen this line before, then we have a good bishop here. And we neutralize this g2 bishop. And later we want to play for c5, and we shouldn't have any problems. While if they accept the pawn, then we have bishop a6. Of course, accepting second pawn is really bad because then it will be a double attack on the queen. But you know, wherever the queen goes, we anyway recapture the pawn with a complex position where our bishop is out. So it's not like in the closed Catalan is blocked on b7 or a6 or c8, but it's out. There are not many games for this position, but again, these different queen moves are analyzed. So yeah, you can check that out from the course. Okay, so that's in this way, basically, you almost have two full systems against the Catalan. Like this type of closed Catalan type of thing. I mean, it's not this rare type of Catalan with a5 you can do against Reti and against the d4 move order all the time, or c4. But there is no way to trick you, and you can almost do the other one as well. You only have to study a little bit what happens if white is not playing knight c3. Okay, so I believe that's part 2 of the course, and in the next one I will show you some very important things as well, or very important part, because after one c4 or one knight f3, white can still reach these lines and some more. So black has to be really careful. So I will show how we did that in the course. So thank you for watching this video, and if you are interested, you can check more details in the Chessable course.